Eurosport live at Magny Cours for the 10th, the final deciding race in the FIA GT Championship. Jamie Campbell-Walter, the leader on lap 22. When we left you on lap 20, he was leading by about 8 seconds, and that was from the number 25 Carsport Holland car. Now, this is Jamie Campbell-Walter running over the curbs at the end of the last lap. There's oil down there, we know that. Now, Andrew Gilbert-Scott, for the last 33 minutes, in the picture with Jamie Campbell-Walter, you would have been able to see a bit of an orange Viper. There isn't one there. The orange Viper of Mike Hasemans has now dropped to 4th place, as we can see there. It's shown as Coronel driving, but in fact we believe it's Mike Hasemans. Nearly 18 seconds back, and we didn't see on the picture here what happened. Now, having seen that Jamie ran over the curbs there when he, I guess, found the oil from that Porsche down at the final curbs, is it possible maybe that the Viper did too and lost those 3 places?
Well, it would appear so. Looking at the lap time, the car's still running okay now, so it shouldn't have actually a major problem. But as you say, we haven't actually seen exactly what happened. It's dropped a fair way behind. We've got the Douai car now obviously in second, Peter Cox in third. So looking at the monitor, there doesn't appear to be anything seriously wrong with the speeds that they're doing. So obviously either some traffic or, as you said, with the oil out the back, which they didn't show, he got caught out by.
Right, now we're seeing not the championship contending orange car there, the 3rd placed car, the Viper. That is the 3rd place car. That's Peter Cox, the 2nd Carsport Holland car. And as they came across the line, Philippe Favre in the 2nd Lister got ahead of the number 25 car rather, and that is the championship contending car of Mark Hasemans. So it's gone from bad to worse for Hasemans. He's now behind the 2nd Lister, whereas last lap he was only behind his own teammate. Favre has obviously seen what has happened, seen the orange car and rubbed his hands with glee and gone, right mate, and dived past him. So now the championship leaders, Jamie Campbell-Walter and Julian Bailey, with Jamie at the wheel of the number 14 Lister, really in a commanding lead. Marc Duez 7 seconds behind in the Belmondo Viper, the yellow and white car, number 11. Peter Cox 3rd place in the, it doesn't count for championship, or it's not in the championship hunt, Carsport Holland car. Philippe Favre in the 2nd Lister in 4th place, and Tom Coronel in the championship contending Carsport Holland car in 5th.
Well, I'm actually looking out of the window here. Right below me now, Tom Coronel's actually sitting on the tyres. They're sort of semi-getting ready, so I don't know how imminent the pit stop is, but obviously he's fully kitted up and the crew is ready, helmeted with the tyres.
Right, well, let's read the pit board. All it says on their pit board, as they're about to show it, is P5 minus 17, which is the gap to Jamie, the race leader, and their position. It doesn't say in, it's not counting down laps, because although the Carsport Holland car is at the first garage at the pit entry and the Lister team is at the last garage at the pit exit, I don't suppose. No, it just says L on the countdown. It doesn't say any number of laps, so they're not expecting a pit stop imminently, although we believe from what we heard from the team before the race that having done 23 laps, they may now be only a couple of laps away from having a pit stop. And if you're in this situation, Andrew, let's say you're in the number 25 car, you've made a mistake, you've dropped down to 5th position, okay? You're not in a position now to do anything about the lead Lister's pace, and you know you may have to stop early, or you may have to do a bit of jiggery-pokery on the fuel strategy. It's now the time to get out of this hole where he's stuck behind the 2nd Lister and can be held up and lose time. It's now the time to come in, have your fuel stop, and then get out of sync with the 2nd Lister and escape its clutches, if you like.
Yeah, they have got to come in. I think that's why Tom now, and I think that's why they'll bring it forward early. It may be that the tyres have actually gone off now because the times are dropping back. Jamie last time did a 1:40.2, and looking at the last that Hasemans did was a 1:41.7. So at this rate, they have got absolutely no chance, obviously. They're dropping back far too fast.
Very interesting that, because Marc Duez in 2nd place is doing the same lap times in his Viper as the Hasemans Viper, and Philippe Favre in the 2nd Lister is doing almost the same times as Jamie in the lead Lister. So it looks as though there is a performance imbalance. And I don't know about Peter Cox taking no prisoners, but I think Philip Favre was lining Tim Sugden up there ready to shoot him if he's dared to get in his way down the hill.
I noticed some flashing there, so whether that's actually the key to whether he's about to pit stop next time, that will be interesting to see, because there seems to be some signalling going on.
Well, Tim Sugden having to take to the concrete there, as he did a few laps ago when he hit the oil patch from the Christian Reed Porsche, but that was purely because Philip Favre was coming up behind him like an express train with headlights full ablaze and was clearly not about to slow down very much. Tim Sugden, of course, as ever, sharing his car with Steve O'Rourke and not quite going past him now, but just coming up behind him is Mike Haseman. So as you say, 2.5 seconds now between Favre and Hasemans, whereas 2 laps ago they were absolutely nose to tail, Favre having just passed. So clearly, I think the Car Sport Holland guys now must start to think, if we can stop now, they've dropped another 2 seconds behind Jamie Campbell-Walter, they're now nearly 20 seconds behind. If we can't stop now, then, well, I suppose they're out of the clutches of Favre. Favre's not holding them up, and so maybe now the need to bring him in to get him away from the second lister isn't there so much. We'll wait and see. Now, the one thing that long distance races always give is an awful lot of questions, and we will try and cover as many points as we can think of during the course of our broadcast from now until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Stop and go penalty being mentioned for Jamie Campbell-Walter. We believe that he is being penalised for passing under a yellow flag, and he will be given a stop and go penalty, which means that suddenly all bets are off.
All of a sudden it's all opened up again.
Mark Duez will lead the race when Jamie comes down pit road, as indeed come down pit road he must, but that means that the second or the Car Sport Holland's car and the lister may well be pretty much ready to go together.
This could be fairly interesting because they're putting out the tyres for Tom Coronel. Tom's waiting, and so they're all livening up. So we should expect both championship contending cars to be coming into the pits for different reasons, but at the same time.
Yes, indeed, which will put them on track together with Tom Coronel and Julian Bailey, respectively, at the wheels. We will have a very interesting battle on our hands then, because it will be like the first few laps again, and we will then again be able to judge the speed of the Lister versus the speed of the Viper. But as you say, what will happen is that Coronel's car will come in once for him to get in, I assume, and to take on fuel, but the Lister team will not be allowed to refuel or change drivers during that stop and go penalty. That must be done as a stop and go penalty. You can't then also do your fueling and pit stop at the same time.
No, that's right. So this could actually be, well, it is a tremendous development for Tom Coronel Husman's situation, and looking out of the window, one of the storms is just going past, so it's not obviously Philippe's car. So
that was Jamie going by again, and he has now, I mean, it's on the timing screens now, so I think he now has one more lap before he will absolutely be forced to come in, and he's on it now. So he's on the second lap after he's been given this penalty, and I think, as with the black flag,
Haseman's into the pit lane. So
So Haseman's coming in. Jamie Campbell-Walter still leading the race, but only for probably this lap before he comes in for a stop and go. Now, outside of our window, Mike Hasemans is about to get out of the car and hand over the number 25 Viper to Tom Coronel. So it's a pit stop for the championship chasing car, and Tom Coronel will now get in. And this is 26 laps into the race, exactly when we were told they believed they would have to change. You're seeing it on the monitors now, and as with all Le Mans rules, fueling only and driver change, nobody allowed to touch the car during that, and then they may change tyres, and it looks as though they're definitely going for a new set of Michelins. Now, they may go for an asymmetric setup. They may go for right sides only or front tyres only, but they're doing all four. So the plot thickens. Jamie Campbell-Walter still leads, but must come in. Jamie Campbell-Walter leading, but under a penalty for passing under yellow flags, and he must come in for a stop and go penalty, and very soon as well, I think. His and Julian Bailey, his teammates, championship rivals. Well, championship rival Mike Hasemans has now bailed out of the number 25 Car Sport Holland car, Viper, and they came in 5th position. They have done their scheduled fuel stop, handed over to Tom Coronel. Lawrence Pierce storms under our window to the head of the pit lane, right where the man is at the scrutineering bay, the FIA scrutineering bay, ready with the stop and go board. Now, I don't know whether it will be literally stop and go or whether it'll be a 10-second. It is going to be a 10-second penalty, the screens are confirming to us. So Jamie Campbell-Walter will have to come into the pits from the race lead. That means Marc Duez will be out front. Peter Cox in the second car sport car will be in second, ahead of Philippe Favre in the second Lister. Hazeman's being shown in 5th place. That's how he was before he came in, and he has now dropped, or he will drop down the order when he comes round this time, because he has been in the pits and handed over to Tom Coronel. So those were the standings at the end of the last complete lap, which was the one on which Mike Hasemans came in to hand over to Coronel. As I was mentioning earlier on, we will try and cover as many aspects of the race as we can between myself and Andrew Gilbert-Scott here while we're on air live for the greater part of the duration. But if you want to ask us anything, if you want to make any comments, or perhaps pick us up on poor car recognition or just dull things that I've said, then feel free to email us. If you go to, if you want to send us an email, it'll be motorsports, all one word, at eurosport.com, and we should be able to pick it up here, hopefully, assuming that my low-tech
Jamie's
laptop
just gone
works.
past the window again, so he still hasn't come in the pit lane. I should think he's maybe he's got one more lap, but he could be very dangerously near, I should imagine, actually getting a further penalty for not having it carried out.
Well, I have to say, I wonder how many laps the FIA GT regulations allow for, because certainly in Formula 1 you get 3 laps and then you're black flagged off the course completely. Lawrence Pierce is down there, and it may be our windows are sort of built up right to the edge with solid commentary booth walls, so we can't actually see where Lawrence is because he's not standing right in our line of view. It may be that he is having a bit of a remonstrate at the moment, and until that is sorted, Jamie won't come in. But I think once the penalty has been notified, then the clock starts running effectively, and Jamie will need to do something about it. So we saw him one minor off-track excursion earlier on when he got caught out down into the final chicane, but obviously also passing a slower car, that would have been, rather than a pass on a direct competitor and under yellow flags. So that is why he's been given this 10-second penalty, and the clock's still running. I think we were at lap 24 when he was given the penalty. We've now done 28, and he's on lap 29. So again, every time he comes down through the final series of corners, which we can see out of our window here, and which you will see him do on the monitors, we look for him to peel over sharp left. Here he comes again, down the hill, through the left-hand element, into the pit lane this time, so he will come in for his stop-and-go penalty now, right under us. And don't forget, as I mentioned earlier, I am sure that they will not be allowed to fuel the car. There's Lawrence Pierce on the extreme left of the picture, headset, talking to Jamie, talking him through this, keeping him calm.
Well, this is the problem, actually keeping calm, because obviously Jamie now feels it's a terrible time. When you're out on the circuit, you can concentrate, you're getting on with your job, you've got your rhythm going. But now, of course, this has upset everybody. This has upset his rhythm, so he's got to get out there and just settle down again, make no stupid mistakes to get out there. The car's obviously going very quickly. It's just upsetting the rhythm, and it will be interesting to see how he can settle back down.
Critical, of course, not to just dump the clutch and light up the rear wheels and leave the pit lane faster than you're allowed to, and that is so much of a potential problem. The Lister team have seen other drivers do it during the course of the year, and they're going to be very determined not to give away a championship by something as silly as that themselves. So Marc Duez now, 29 laps into this race, our race leader. Peter Cox in second place. A Belgian leads a Dutchman. Philippe Favre, the Frenchman, in third place. A very Gallic flavour at the moment to the top 3. In fourth place after his stop-and-go, Jamie Campbell-Walter. And to bring you up to date with what happened to Tom Coronel after his pit stop, he is currently lying 7th. Now, Jamie Campbell-Walter being shown by the timing screen as having made a pit stop, because of course he's triggered off the pit entry barrier with or counter with his transponder, but it's not a race pit stop. That will be his stop-and-go penalty. So I will undoubtedly say, well, they've already made 2 pit stops. When did they make the second one? Later on, Andrew. Just remind me of that, won't you?
No.
Right, let me dig a hole bigger than even I can fill. So here is our new race leader then, Marc Duez, and he's sharing this car with Paul Belmondo, who runs runs 3 Vipers in the Belmondo racing team. Second place, you can see the second Car Sport Holland there. That's the orange Viper, just going past one of the 360 Modenas. That's one of the JMB Racing Ferraris. And going past Christophe Boucher there's the third place car, Philippe Favre. Now Favre, of course, sharing with wealthy German driver Nikolaus Springer, who started his season with British long distance ace Peter Hardman. Springer very much a part, as Lawrence Pierce was telling us yesterday, of the Lister operation. Not just a driver, not just a car owner, but part of the business, Lawrence said, and very much a part of the business. So clearly he will take over from Philippe Favre for the middle stint, and I think with the way that the championship is balanced, being partially a team patron as well as one of the drivers, I think that Springer will probably restrict himself to as few laps as he thinks he can decently get away with. Well, here is the better placed of the 2 Pennzoil Porsches. This is Magnus Wallander, who started, the Swede, who's done a lot of his racing recently. There he is, the yellow and blue colours on his helmet. And Wallander is bolting in his teammates to take over for the middle stint of what I'm sure will be a double stop session, as Jeff Lister was telling us earlier. So Nigel Smith getting in, and Magnus Wallander. The drivers are allowed to help each other doing their belts and so on, and radio clips and all the other stuff, but only fueling may be done by the crew, and only 4 men over the wall, as they say in the States, or 4 men working on the car at any one time. No tyres for them, and that is pretty bold. Their Dunlop tyres haven't always been an answer for the Michelins of the Chirot Porsche that has won the championship here, but going for a double stint on their tyres. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare in terms of lap times, directly comparable, of course, with their teammates, who are a few spots behind them on the racecourse.
Interestingly enough, I can just see Tom's just done a 1:38.1, which is basically 2 seconds quicker than everybody else, and obviously he's really on it. The car's obviously good, so I noticed when they drove off there's a bit of gravel that fell out from underneath the car, so obviously there was a bit of an excursion that took place earlier on, but that's obviously an impressive lap time. Obviously he's on the new tyres, so again it'll be interesting to see what the drop-off is, but Jamie's obviously still hasn't got himself back up to speed. He's done a 1:40.2, so as I said, it's the 2 second difference, which obviously could bite into the lead, as I would say, that Jamie has, obviously only over Coronel, as he's lying in 4th place.
Well, Jamie at the moment in 4th place, as you say. 5th place man Patrice Gosselin is 45 seconds behind Jamie, and 27 seconds further back is Tom Coronel. So Jamie has got a buffer, but not a big enough buffer for a pit stop where he'll still come out ahead of Coronel, or where Julian Bailey will still come out ahead of Tom Coronel. So the battle now, well, the plot thickens. However, for Jamie Campbell-Walter and Julian Bailey, as long as the Car Sport Holland car of Hasemans and Coronel doesn't finish either first or second, doesn't matter where it finishes, because they're 4.5 points ahead already. You only get 4 for 3rd place. Even if the Lister pair don't score a thing, 3rd place is simply no good for Hasemans. He must be first or second, and right now, despite that stop and go penalty, still the number 14 Lister, rather than this teammate car of Philippe Favre, the number 15 car, is in the driving seat.
Yes, that's true. I mean, obviously all will unfold more as the pit stops take place, and we can see the number 15 car is in. So we presume 14 will be, I should imagine, follow shortly.
I would think they'll give them a lap or 2, so that means that they will come in. We've currently done 32. I would think they'll come in on lap 34 or maybe even lap 35, just to make sure that there is no chance of a car still being stationary while the championship leaders come in. They certainly don't want their teammates to be there and to have all that confusion. That cost them their first ever potential race win at Donington Park last year, and being boxed in the pits is something they will desperately want to avoid. So Philippe Favre out, Nikolaus Springer in, and that will, well, certainly give a chance for the Coronel car now to potentially move up 1 spot, because I think that although the Favre car was ahead of the Car Sport Holland machine when he came in, with I don't think Nikolaus Springer would have too much problem admitting that he's not on the front running pace, certainly of Tom Coronel, who is, I think, still putting in some pretty prodigious lap times. Again, his last lap 1:38.8. No, his last lap now 1:37.5.
That's
fastest lap of the race.
though, so this is it. Tom is, and you know, with the other cars ahead of him that have got to make the pit stops, this is really what is needed. And the problem one might say, of course, is they did make that pit stop fairly early, and maybe that's a sign they're using more fuel, or it might just be that they wanted to get Tom in that car and really turn in some very quick laps.
Well, here is the second car, Sport Holland car, coming in from second place, Peter Cox, and he will step out. Yes, he will, to hand over to David Hart. And this is very much an all-Dutch setup, racing for Holland, if you like, although that's much more associated, obviously, with Jan Lammers. But still, the change goes on, and as we cut away from there, I think they're going to go for tyres as well. Having seen how effective they've been on the Hasemans and Coronel car, I'm pretty sure I'd go for tyres, aren't you, Andrew?
Yeah, well, they're definitely there. The fuel, they've just finished the fuel, and I can see the car being jacked up, and they're just putting the wheels on now. So that car will be out very shortly.
So the caption, as it says, Marc Duez still race leader on lap 34, his fastest lap of the race, a 1:38.3, currently doing 1:41.3s, and that gives you an idea of how much the tyres have dropped off. Don't forget, everybody's starting races on one of the pairs of tyres that they had for qualifying yesterday, and almost all the cars will have used both sets in qualifying. The FIA nominates which set of the two sets of tyres for the qualifying day you must race on, and then obviously you go out and doing most of your qualifying running on the other set and try and keep your race starting tyres as much as possible. And even
quicker lap time there by Tom Coronel. He's just done a 1:37.4, which again is extremely quick. Jamie's done a 39.4, so he's eating into that, and obviously we're expecting Jamie to be in the pit lane fairly quickly, or fairly soon.
Definitely. Coronel 2 seconds quicker than Jamie Campbell-Walter and 4 seconds quicker than race leader Marc Duez. Now behind Marc Duez, the second place car as was, the Hart car as it is now, David Hart at the wheel, has stopped, so he won't be second anymore. Jamie Campbell-Walter is up to second as he comes across the line, 18.8 seconds behind Marc Duez. His last lap 1:40.2, and Tom Coronel still in the 1:37s. You're looking here at race leader Marc Duez, and with 34 laps, he's now on lap 35. He must be due to come in pretty soon, I would think.
Yes, I would expect so. Probably, I would say the next lap he's likely to come in. It must be, the fuel would be at that stage. Get Julian in.
We're 55 minutes, 56 minutes, nearly 57 minutes into the race, and so the race leader and the championship leader should be due to stop any moment now. Marc Duez, the race leader, 35 laps he's now on as he comes around the Magny Cours circuit here for the 10th and final race in the FIA GT Championship. Behind him, Jamie Campbell-Walter, who has led the race from the start. Despite having a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, he has worked his way back up into second place, largely as a result of most of the other Vipers and the second lister in the GT category having stopped. Just at Marc Duez, Jamie Campbell-Walter, and the man who's now in third place in the Belmondo car, Claude-Yves Gosselin, yet to stop from the leaders. So the championship contenders, Mike Hasemans and Tom Coronel, have stopped as Duez comes to a halt. He will receive service from the Belmondo crew.
No, Jamie's not out in the pit.
And Belmondo gets in, so Campbell-Walter now reasserts himself as the race leader. Now, Julian Bailey did say yesterday that they had a pretty large fuel window.
Interesting.
Well, I think they've got a set of fuel patio doors. They're able to extend it so long. And was that the Favre car getting going again from near stationary? Well, we cut back to Jamie Campbell-Walter. Just for a moment there, it looked as though the Favre and Springer car at the Adelaide hairpin. Nicolaus Springer at the wheel. And we've seen Philippe Favre spin twice, pointing the car round on the nose under braking, and immediately Nicolas Springer being caught out by exactly the same thing. Now, you were saying earlier, Andrew Gilbert-Scott, that Philippe Favre does like a bit of a softer front end, and it doesn't seem to be working. It may give him more bite, but it seems to be biting back as well.
Well, yeah, and it seems so extreme. I mean, they've been running this car over the few days, and they haven't been having this problem. It may well be that they've had a damper go down on them, and or they've got a problem with the roll bar there, because it's so ridiculous. The car is obviously incredibly sensitive, and directly it jacks up on one of the front corners. It just pivots around it. And for Philippe to do that relentlessly, I mean, you get a feel for where the car is, and for him to do that a few times, and obviously to see it straight away with Springer in the car, I would say that probably a damper problem that's making the car very unstable.
Well, that's exactly what they can afford on that car. What they really can't afford, though, on the Campbell, Walter and Bailey cars. Still our race leader on lap 36 now, and in he comes. So the race leader again comes into the pits, this time though for fuel service. I'm sure they will take tyres, and I'm sure that Julian Bailey will get in now. So there is Jamie Campbell-Walter ending his first stint, and he did promise that he'd come up and bother us later, so we may yet get a chance to chat to him if he can manage to work his way up here in the middle hour of the race, in between showing you the roundup of this year's Euro STC and what happened earlier this afternoon, or this morning as it still is, in the Formula Renault Euro Cup here. Of course, these are all elements of what will be Eurosport's Racing Weekends package next year, centering around the FIA GTs, as that's a 360 Modena, parked nose into the gravel. Well, Julian Bailey is getting into the Lister Storm, as you can see. Unfortunately, the bright sunlight reflecting so badly on our screen, we're going to almost have to take the timing screen's word for it, but very calm, cool and collected. Look at that, no rushing, no hurrying. I mean, it looks as though they're swapping over in practice and just, the dampers seem to be okay. Why don't you go out and, see what you think?
It's a very professional driver's attitude, because obviously this kind of environment, it's the easiest thing to panic. So what you do, and obviously Julian's a master of this, he just settles down, super relaxes. So it looks far too relaxed, but inside there's a focus, attention to a detail. He's going through all the rhythm. He will have been told how the car's handling, obviously, from Jamie, and I think he obviously looks, they're in a fairly good situation. The car's obviously quick, whether it's actually quick enough, because Tom's obviously doing very quick laps, but it'll be interesting now to see immediately what Julian can do after a couple of laps and everything's warmed up.
The other thing, of course, is that you can't do anything else to the car until you finish the fueling, and so he knew that until he heard the air hammers there was no need to worry at all, because you've still got another 15 seconds before you need to be ready for the car to be dropped down, so you have the brake on and the gear in. But also, don't forget, the Carsport Holland car came in after 26 laps. Bailey and Campbell-Walter did 36 laps, so they must have been loading that thing up with fuel again to give them another huge middle stint. And then again, the chance maybe to do some jiggery-pokery with their fuel window. As I said earlier, their fuel window is really a set of fuel patio doors. They've got a huge margin, it seems.
And they will have definitely built that car right up. With Julian in there, he'll want to do a decent length stint in that, and he'll do as long as he can. So that car will be absolutely full up to the brim.
So they managed over, oh my goodness me, the 39 car very sideways there. David Hart just getting in too hot and scaring himself a little bit, I think, there for a moment. Certainly recovered it nicely. Let's see how he can recover his composure. He's under pressure from Paul Belmondo from behind. This is for what is now second place, because Tom Coronel is the race leader in the 25 Carsport Holland car as this comes across the line. In fact, it's for third, because Julian Bailey came back out in second place. Now, despite that long stop, no, he's now being shown dropping down the order. That's right, he hasn't come across the line, so he's not in fact second, but here he comes. So he is in fact behind this battle in fourth place, and knowing that they can run at least an hour, whereas the Carsport Holland rivals, the number 25 car, they did 26 laps, which was about 45, 48 minutes.
Yeah, so it looks like they're probably going to have to do a splash and dash at the end.
Yeah.
Depending on obviously whether there's any particular fracker in between now and then, but it looks highly likely that they're going to have to do that or lean the car right off, but it'll be hard for them to actually probably find that much fuel. So obviously the lap times Tom is doing, he's not saving fuel, but certainly doesn't appear to be. He's actually maybe using the fuel that was saved earlier on, but the lap times are very quick, and of course he's where he wants to be, which is leading.
He is indeed, and his last lap 1:40.1, so some way off his fastest when he had the best of the tyres. Even that was pretty much 10 laps ago, and that's when they really give of their best in the first 10 laps. But Julian Bailey, well, he's only just come out of the pits. This will be our chance as he comes across the line in about half a minute to see his sort of first sortie out onto the track. The other leaders, though, pretty much all in the 140s. Coronel 1:40.1, David Hart in second place, 140.7, so clearly he has regained his composure. Coronel's last lap, 140.8, and Belmondo in third place, 140.5, catching up on Hart a little, as we see Tom Coronel, the race leader. And so, yeah, 140.8 for the race leader, 140.7, 140.73 for Hart and Belmondo in second and third places. And Bailey just about to come to the line. He's coming down through the final couple of corners. And if he's not down in the 136s or 137s, I will be a bit surprised. So Julian Bailey crosses the line, 141.7. I am a bit surprised, but there was traffic ahead of him, so he may have been close-ish behind him. So he may just have been feeling the car out on his first flying lap. So our race leaders then. Tom Coronel, as we look back here, this is one of a pair of the Chirot cars. And the 52 car, that is the Christophe Bouchou Patrice Gousselard car. That is the NGT class leader at the moment, yet to stop. And they are leading their category. Tim Sugden in second place, yet to stop also and hand over to Steve O'Rourke. And they will stretch their opening and closing stints as long as possible. O'Rourke will do about 20 minutes in the middle of the race, which is his normal kind of strategy. Bob Wallach in third place in the class, incidentally, in the number 79 Red Bull racing car with Hans-Jörg Hofer. So that's the top three in the NGT category. In fourth place is the number 57 Art Engineering car of Fabio Mancini, who started it, and Giovanni Luca Coloni, who will take over in the middle session. That's pretty much the way that the GT class breaks down. Although, as Jeff Lister was telling us, it's touch and go as to whether they can do the full hour, and he was saying if they don't get a pace car of some kind to slow the pace down and save them a bit of fuel, then they might be in splash and dash territory. So in the last 10 laps, the pits might be a pretty busy place, Andrew. Yeah, well, they would really rely. They're 30, looking at it, they're sort of 31 seconds behind. Obviously, a pit stop with no tyre change, a splash and dash is very, very quick. But even so, they do need to do that. They're currently lying fourth. Tom Coronel's currently lying first, which obviously means that the championship, they're currently losing the championship in the position they are. So they need to respond. And Julian's just done a 39.0, and Tom has done a 38.0. So still Tom is pulling away by a second a lap at this stage. So this is not going according to plan for the Storm team, but obviously very much upset with that stop-and-go penalty they had earlier on. Well, there you see one of the Pennzoil cars spinning. As that was happening, I was just watching Nikolaus Springer losing a place to the number 22 GT class Porsche, one of the 911 GT2s. That's Franz and Nico Vieth, the father and son combo. And, well, there's the Adelaide hairpin problem that everybody has talked about. Contact between drivers. That's the Robert Nern Jeff Lister car. Now, that one hasn't, it has stopped actually, so that might even have been Jeff Lister, who was up here with us earlier, experiencing the curse of the commentators there, as he got the 39 Carsport Holland car of David Hart inside him, and contact was made, spinning around the lighter Porsche, but then he was on the outside, and that's pretty much always your fate, I think, if you're in that sort of situation. So this is first and second on the... That does look a bit of a right-hand rear puncture. And well, here's Jeff. It's being shown on the screen still as Robert Nern in the 51 car, but it's also being shown as having made a pit stop. So I would have thought that probably Jeff Lister would have been in the car, but I'm certainly not going to stake any money on that. The last lap, looking down on the screen here, Tom Coronel and Julian Bailey have done identical lap times, so maybe maybe that sort of the rot has stopped, and maybe Julian now be able to respond. Well, yeah, Julian's last lap was a 139.0. Tom is ahead of him, of course, on the road. His lap was a 139.0, and then Julian's just come across the line 139.6. So he's sort of caught a bit of traffic or whatever. I can't believe that a driver of Julian's experience is fluctuating by more than half a second a lap. So, yeah, but they are still the fastest two cars on the track. Oh, no, they're not. Who's that doing 1 minute 38.0? That can't be right. It is the number 10 Belmondo Viper with Anthony Kumpen, the Belgian driver at the wheel, is the fastest car on the track at the moment, doing 138.6s. He is 11th place, but I have to say I'm surprised that he is going quicker than either Bailey or Coronel. With no particular disrespect to him, I would definitely expect them to be the two quickest cars on the track at the moment, as they have been all the way through practice, with the exception of qualifying. Aha! The pit board for the Carsport Holland goes out, and what does it say, Andrew?
peering out, it actually says fuel.
But the word above it in white sticky tape, which they don't normally have, but they've made up specially, says...
Yes, save fuel. And I don't think they're talking about cheap race fuel either. I think that they're desperate to try and get some fuel back. And that was the next comment I was going to ask you. What will a splash and dash cost in time? I wonder what the pit entry and exit... I haven't calculated the exact time we'll need.
Bailey's lap, including his pit stop, was over 3.5 minutes.
But of course, a full tyre change, and they had to wait, and etc. So that will... But
I think you've got to go from a 1 minute 38 lap to maybe a 3 minute lap.
Yes, probably something around that, I suppose.
So it's going to cost. It's certainly going to cost. Well, the race finally poised at the moment. Tom Coronel leading. Paul Belmondo in second place, David Hart in third in the second car Sport Holland Viper, Julian Bailey in fourth place. Both the leaders of the championship and the leaders of the race, Tom Coronel and Mike Hasemans, have stopped. And so we are now in the middle section of the race with the two championship contending cars. The chasers are in first place and the leaders are in fourth place, and that is enough to win Bailey and Campbell-Walter the championship. No, it's not, but still they are pretty much in the driving seat, as they can do, we know, 10 laps longer than the Coronel car can out front. And the race leaders are being told already we're only just an hour and 10 minutes into this 3-hour distance to save fuel. So the Car Sport Holland car may lead. Bailey and Campbell-Walter in fourth place after a very full pit stop and a stop-and-go penalty for passing under yellows. And I think still the balance of this race could swing in either direction. What the Car Sport Holland guys will desperately be hoping for is some kind of elongated safety car period. A dozen laps behind a yellow flags would certainly help their cause no end, as you always wish for some sort of race slowing when you're trying to save fuel, as they are. But Bailey and Campbell-Walter, fourth place at the moment on the road, but pretty much in the driving seat. And Julian Bailey still lapping quicker than Tom Coronel. His tyres are still 10 laps newer than Coronel's, and despite the extra heavy fuel load, Bailey still seems to be able to produce the goods on a very regular basis. Now, we're going to be leaving the race here at Magny Cours for a moment or two to bring you the highlights of this year's Euro STC Championship, which of course was decided just a couple of weeks ago. You've been able to follow it throughout the season on Eurosport, and next year it will be also part of our Eurosport Racing Weekend package. A chance then to catch up with the Euro STC Championship, and then we will come back live. We'll be rejoining live at something like 12:35 in Europe. That's 11:35 or so British Eurosport. There is the position as we leave it. Bailey and Campbell-Walter, the championship leaders, by 4.5 from Mike Hasemans, who leads the race with his co-driver Tom Coronel in the car at the moment. I'm Martin Haven, Andrew Gilbert-Scott with me, and we'll be here throughout the rest of this race up until its 2 o'clock finale and see how the championship is decided. While we are on air and while we're away, indeed, if you want to ask questions or add information, offer suggestions, please do so by email. Motorsports, all one word, at eurosport.com, and we will have a look at your mails and maybe try and bring you additional information to answer your questions. So Dutch fans, your guys are out front. The glory of the orange car remains in the balance, so join us in a while when we rejoin here live at Magny Cours. Till then, bye for now. Change of lead. Julian Bailey in the race lead from the 11 Belmondo Viper. Right behind him, there it is, the yellow machine. Paul Belmondo has held off Julian Bailey for over 10 laps, and now Julian Bailey, as he has done so many times, lining him up down the start-finish straight and then sliding by into the first corner. He got bored of trying at the Adelaide hairpin. He found there was no dice there, and so he's pulled something out. He's come up with a little innovative move there, unexpected. Every lap for the last 10 he's followed Belmondo all the way down to the Adelaide hairpin, and there he didn't bother. He just sneaked down the inside, got a much better run out of the first corner. And Andrew, so often we see that in motor racing. When you have tried and tried and tried at a certain point, you've got to throw something completely different into the mix to to try and catch the driver out, because he obviously wasn't expecting it there, and Julian Bailey now back in the race lead.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you show yourself all the time, then everybody knows where to protect, and obviously they know what you're going to be trying to do. So that's why very often, if you feel that you've got a good overtaking manoeuvre, you don't want to show your hand, you'll just wait, and then you'll do it in an aggressive move, but make sure it sticks. And obviously Julian just waited, felt that he obviously got a good exit speed from the corner before, and just make it stick.
Well, when Julian Bailey took over the car from Jamie Campbell-Walter, because they'd had a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for passing under yellow flags, they were down in 4th place. And Julian, when he came back out after his pit stop, was behind David Hart in the second of the Car Sport Holland cars. Their rivals, Mike Hazemans and Tom Coronel, have since then made a pit stop. Tom Coronel got out of the car, Mike Hazemans is back in, and they stayed on their 26 laps on a tank of fuel schedule. Bear in mind that Bailey and Campbell-Walter did 36 on their first tank of fuel, which was clearly very, very full indeed. As you might expect, starting on the front row of the grid with the upper hand, jam the thing full of fuel, hope to stay ahead of your rivals into the first turn and then hold them up all the way. You can stay out longer than them, and that immediately puts them on the back foot, and that seems to have been what's happened. This is the order at the moment. The David Hart car in 3rd place. Took Julian Bailey 2 or 3 laps actually to get past him after the pit stops, but I think he was just being doubly cautious, because of course it was the teammate of the Mike Hazemans Tom Coronel car, and there's always just the suspicion that, you know, if you don't quite get the move done perfectly, there might be a little bit of unintentional contact. And I'm sure, you know, the sceptic inside Julian Bailey was just making double sure when he finally made the move. Well, since then, Andrew, he's raced right up behind Paul Belmondo in the number 11 Viper, and then, as I said, 10 laps bottled up behind. Now he's shown his hand and he's back in the lead of the race, but still the number 25 car in 4th position, on a very different fuel strategy to the listers. And you've been beavering around down in the pits. What can you tell us about how the Car Sport Holland see the race?
Well, what it is, they've actually said that the car is using too much fuel and too much oil, not just because of the circuit and the conditions it is, but it's actually the engine. They're using the same engine that they ran at Le Mans and a few other places. The engine is just using too much. It's too old. It's obviously not as efficient as it should be. So they won't obviously say, it won't say everything, but the long and the short of it is they're going to have to put more fuel in than the lister. And if you work out that it goes in at about 2 litres a second, and say 15 litres, probably a total running time through the pits or total track loss time then will probably be somewhere near a minute, hopefully under a minute for them. So that still puts them right in contention after Julian obviously will have to make his pit stop. So it's quite an interesting one, and it's still a long way to be, a lot to go before the decision is made who's actually holding the trump cards at the moment.
Well, there you go. That partially at least answers one of the email questions we've had in from the Lowick family, who I'm not quite sure where they're sitting in front of the TV, but they're sitting in front of the TV. Welcome to Eurosport's GT coverage. They wanted to know what the situation was with fuel with the Lister versus the Vipers. Now, I've just been doing a little bit of slide rule arithmetic, and anybody who knows me knows that this is not to be trusted at all. But so far, the Car Sport Holland team, although they said that they had been more economical in the second run with Tom Coronel than in the first, did the same number of laps, 26 laps, and their 2 stops so far have taken them 86 minutes from the start of the race to the start of their second stop. So I'm figuring roughly 43 minutes a stop. Now, if we extrapolate that, they stopped last at 12:26 on lap 52. Lap 78 should come up for them around 10 past 1. And that leaves them with another 45 minutes even in the car, still coming up 5 or 10 minutes short on a 2-stop, 3 section of the race strategy. So, unless they are really saving something, I don't think we've seen evidence of it into that second stop, because it was the same number of laps. Now, if this one goes longer, then obviously Mike Hazemans, as he said before he got in the car, is able to save a bit of fuel, and that may bring them back into the same fuel pit stop window that we think the Lister is going to be able to do, which is stopping on the hour, every hour. Into the equation here, we have to put the Belmondo Viper, car number 11, which Paul Belmondo is at the wheel of at the moment, but which Marc Duez started so capably. They're in second place, only just come out of the race lead as Julian Bailey's got past them, and they stopped the lap before the Bailey and Campbell-Walter Lister storm. Now, that means that they are pretty much on the same fuel schedule as well. It's no use to Mike Hasemans if another Viper wins the race, but we've been talking about the Drivers' Championship. Lister and Paul Belmondo Racing are also racing for the Teams' Championship here, so that may have a knock-on effect with regard to one of the two titles that Lawrence Pearson and Lister team are hoping to win here.
Yeah, it also sort of confirms what Tom was saying to me, because obviously that Belmondo car is the Viper as well, and it's obviously getting better fuel consumption than Tom's car, so it would indicate that the engine is using more than it should. There's this other interesting factor bubbling along down there, or underneath the surface. There's a certain discussion going on about whether the Bailey car was too late coming in for its original stop-go penalty that it had for overtaking under yellow flags, and there is a discussion obviously as to what will happen. The team apparently are either protesting or trying to protest, and obviously we'll try and keep you up to date with that as it develops.
Well, I was just talking to Jürgen Barth, one of the race directors, on the walkie-talkie during the ad break, and he was saying that in Formula One we're used to the situation where as soon as it's flashed up on the TV screen, which goes around the globe as well as down the paddock, the penalty is law, and then you have your 3 laps to come in. Because this is let's say, much less wealthy and extravagant category than Formula One, not everybody will necessarily have a pit lane monitor, and so that system is not used. The penalty only starts counting down from when Lawrence Pearce signed the piece of paper that the stewards brought him saying, you have been penalised for this, and from then the 3 laps started. Now, if they put it up on the monitors when they make the decision, but then they have to leg it right down to the far end of the pits, and maybe this is another good reason why Lawrence is always at the far end of the pits, then it gives him a little bit of time in lieu. Now, the Car Sport Holland guys have obviously seen the penalty and have, well, I don't know, either counted differently to the way that the Lister team counted, or have decided that they will try a protest anyway and see what happens. After all, there's nothing to lose. It's a few quid to lodge a protest, but it may have
they may be
a
actually
big
trying
dividend.
to clarify the situation and see how they're actually going to define it. I think the discussions are obviously taking place as we talk, so hopefully a decision will be finalised, shall we say, very shortly, and then we'll actually know, because obviously it'll have a huge effect on the race, which at the moment is in the balance.
Indeed it is. Jamie Campbell-Walter led the opening going for Lister, led for about an hour and 2 or 3 minutes, including a stop-and-go penalty, as we mentioned earlier, for stopping under yellow flags. And David Hart is in the gravel in the car that's in 4th place. That's the second of the Car Sport Holland machines, the number 39 car. Bailey took over the race-leading car at just after the 1 hour mark, and I imagine he'll give it back to Jamie Campbell-Walter in something like maybe 8 or 10 minutes, because that will then take them sort of 2 hours and 5 minutes or so into the race, and that's pretty much where I expect them to change. But at the moment, Julian Bailey 1 minute 41.3, Mike Hasemans 1:39.4, and Tom Coronel setting very quick times in that Viper, despite the fact that he was being asked to save fuel and believed he was. Mike Hasemans also at the moment going quicker than Julian Bailey. He's in the 1:39s as opposed to Julian Bailey, who's in the mid 1:41s, which is nearly a 2-second a lap difference. How can you save fuel and go quicker? Come on, you know all about this stuff.
Well, it actually gets to the point where when you try and save a certain amount of fuel, you just cannot do it. You can't. You need to go around the corners as quickly as possible. Should we say that? Because that's fairly obvious, because you're not going to use much fuel. That takes as much speed into the corner. Try not to put on the throttle that hard, but there is a limit. There is, you just, other than going ridiculously slowly, you cannot squeeze that much fuel. Mapping, they obviously could try and map the cars so as to just try and lean it off as much as possible. Then you have the danger of blowing the engine up. So there is very little, and obviously the lap times they're doing, they consider they have to do. Any slower than that and they're not going to be in with a fight anyway.
The Adelaide hairpin catches out the 58 Freisinger Motorsport car of Nikolai Fomenko and Alex Vasilev. Not sure which of the Russian drivers is in the car at the moment, because I can't be bothered to go to the bottom of the second timing screen. It was, I've lost him. Oh, Fomenko. Okay, so there you go. But the Adelaide hairpin has caught out a lot of people. Again, one of the questions that we wanted to know beforehand was about this car, Nikolaus Springer in the number 415 Lister Storm, the second Lister. We've seen it pivot around the front end, twice here and once somewhere else with Philip Fabre. There I think he was just having an extremist braking moment because there was a car on the racing line, but we surmise that there might have been some damage, maybe to a shock absorber or something. You've got some more information about that as well.
I went down there, and apparently very earlier on there was a bit of contact with one of the slower cars, and the steering now is no longer straight. Now that also may have meant that in the contact that took place, obviously something has bent, but it may have damaged the pickup point for the damper or something as well. So the car, probably the corner weights are not equal, which means that when you brake, the car will dip down onto the lighter corner, which obviously makes the car very unstable, and as we've seen, it's rotated quite a few times. It's obviously very difficult to drive.
Despite that, they have moved up into 5th position as the David Hart car continues to slide down the order. Now, this is 25. It's the sister car. Mike Hazeman's in 2nd place. And the Belmondo car, number 11, not in the shot. Now, is that... yes, it's just saying 2 on its pit stop, so we didn't notice it come under our window, but it has come into the pits for its 2nd fuel stop, and that is just before the hour, which means that Belmondo either didn't need to be or wasn't able to be as fuel efficient as Marc Duez was in the first stop, because he did make it, I think, pretty much exactly an hour before he had to come in. Whatever, the Belmondo car in the pits, out of 2nd place. So Bailey leads now from Hazeman's. That's no good for Mike Hazeman's. Needs to be at least the other way round. And there goes the 11 car. Talk of the devil, and he will appear. Now, we haven't mentioned Robert Nern, so I'm not and Jeff Lister's car for a while. I'm not quite sure what Jeff Lister's doing here then. That'll be because I imagine we saw the car going out of the race. Andrew, if you want to hand over your headset, he's not looking very happy, is he? Look, he hasn't got his racing overalls on like he had before. He's got his team shirt and trousers on. We saw the car pulling off at the side of the road. Tell us what happened.
It just seemed to get T-boned at the Adelaide hairpin there. Brakes turned in, I heard a lock-up, and got clouted on the rear right quarter of the car by one of the... I'm not sure which one.
It was the David Hart Viper, in fact, and then we saw you pulling over, and it looked, from what we could see the rear arch flapping around, so presumably you broke or lost a wheel, or...
Yeah, that's where he made contact with the car, and I think the rear wheel on my car was bent slightly.
Now, in response to one of the emails we've had earlier on during the show, if you want to ask us questions, motorsports@eurosport.com is the email address. Osama Lawand, he said, "Hi, I'm a first-time watcher of these races. I own a Porsche 911 Turbo. I'm more than happy with its performance. Why are the Porsches so slow?" Well, in your category, in the NGT category, your race car doesn't have a turbo, so clearly it's not in the same performance league as the GT class cars, but the older GT2 Porsche, I think the answer really is it's just that. It's old now, isn't it? Particularly even compared to the newer GT3Rs.
Yeah, the difference really is from in 96, the Porsche Turbo was a competitive car. Since then, things like the Vipers, Corvettes, Listers have moved on, and the Porsche 911 hasn't. It was at the end of its development as the 993, and Porsche simply haven't come up with a 996 Turbo yet to compete with the Vipers and Corvettes. So it just hasn't been developed over the last 4 or 5 years. And you do have a couple of teams like Rook and Conrad that are still trying to, Freisinger, who's here, trying to squeeze as much as they can out of the car, but they get to the point where they squeeze too much and the cars become unreliable.
The performance barrel is pretty much empty as far as the GT2, or as we refer to it here, the GT category car is concerned, the Porsche Turbo. As you say, you're really trying to squeeze blood from a stone now, and as the others continue with their development, whether it's private, like the Lister team, very much a self-contained unit, they build their own engines, even though it's based on Jaguar's Le Mans winning V12 7-litre engine, or whether it's the factory Viper team, the Orica team, that have continually developed that car over the best part of the last decade. As soon as you stand still in motor racing, you don't stop, you go backwards. And as you say, the GT3R is the current customer Porsche racer, and it's pretty much wiped the floor with everything that used to be in the small category, both here in the FIA series and at home in Britain. Nothing else in the GTO class in the British GT Championship even comes close.
Yeah, I was speaking with Porsche the other week. They haven't got any immediate plans to come back either. they launched the Carrera GT at the Paris Motor Show a couple of weeks ago, so maybe that'll be the platform of their new GT car in 2003.
2 minutes past the hour, according to my very dodgy digital stopwatch, and Julian Bailey comes down the pit road with the Lister Storm. Now, coming in from the race lead, he was 28.5 seconds ahead of Mike Hasemans, and that means that when Jamie Campbell-Walter gets back behind the wheel, as he will do now, he will probably rejoin the race in second place. I don't think, in all fairness, that Anthony Kumpen in the number 10 Belmondo Viper, who still has to make his second stop, will be much of a problem for Jamie. Now, we saw this on-board shot earlier. Julian was in the seats then. Jamie was leaning in the door, as I said earlier, like they were on a test day. Oh, chat, 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 and Julian was casually doing up the belts. And I mentioned then that not only was that because he doesn't have to worry about being concentrated until he hears the air hammers taking the tyres off, because he knows up until then they're still doing the fueling and nothing else can happen, he can't leave, but also because they're taking on so much fuel. Now, not only, as we've heard from Andrew, has the Carsport Holland Viper got a little bit of a consumption problem in terms of fuel, oil and I should think sweat and tears as well, but the Lister seems to be particularly raxed, and having started on the front row of the grid, taking on a big dose of fuel for the first stint. They're doing it again. Jamie Campbell-Walter leaves the pits, and that's another reason there why Lawrence Pierce always likes, whether it's in the FIA series or last year in the British series, to be right at pit exit, because then you can just drop the car and Jamie can nail it out onto the track. And Jeff Lister and Tim Sugden, who have joined me here, along with their respective co-drivers, well, Magnus Wallander, quite often last year was coming herring up behind Jamie as he took over the car in the British GT series from Julian Bailey. And I think at the beginning of the year, certainly Bailey was very much regarded as the ex-Grand Prix driver, the kind of superstar in the team. But I don't think there's as a viewer, I don't think there's an awful lot to choose between them in terms of pace. Would that be your sort of view on the pair of them, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fairly true for a lot of the top teams in the championship. Either in the NGT or the GT category, the top 3 or 4 cars in each category both run, they run very good, quick, experienced drivers. So I think there isn't one driver, I don't think, in any category that's dramatically quicker than anyone else.
Well, we've just been speaking to Jeff Lister, whose car sadly has been the subject of an unwarranted attention episode with a 39 Hart Viper, which incidentally has, I think, pretty much retired. We saw it in the gravel earlier on. Also got a chance now to, if Jeff can do the headset shuffle, to chat to another of the British representatives in the NGT class, because we saw Tim Sugden's car pulling off in billowing clouds of smoke earlier on, Tim, when we were away watching the highlights of the Euro STC. So clearly the EMI MK Porsche, you just handed it over, I think, to Steve, hadn't you? So that must have come as a pleasant surprise to poor old Steve.
Yeah, I think it was a shame. The car was going very, very well today, and Steve had taken over. I think Steve had done maybe something like 10 laps. I'd gone off to try and get a drink and recover a little bit. And he was going very well, doing 48s, and one of the quickest second drivers out there at the time, and the engine just went. So what a shame. I think the car was running very well.
Definitely a shame, and it's not a great way to end the season for anybody to have their car either blow up on them or get knocked off. You like to make the mistakes yourself whenever you can. Well, we're going for a short advert break at the moment. Mike Hasemans and Tom Coronel's car still leads. Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter, the championship leaders, in third position, and everything very finely balanced. Stay with us, we'll be back in a moment. Eurosport live at Magny Cours for the 10th and final of the deciding race in the FIA GT Championship, well, at least in the GT category, the main class, and we're looking down here into the NGT category as it is here. This is Andre Arla's car, which is in 7th position in the category, 5 laps down on the race leaders, not necessarily his class leaders. He's 2 laps behind the Riccatelli Porsche. And Luca Riccatelli being part of this weekend by not Hans-Jörg Hofer but by Dieter Quester. The Red Bull team has expanded to 2 Red Bull cars, and they are leading the category, still from Christophe Bouchou by 18 seconds. Now they're on a slightly different fuel strategy, both those 2 cars. Bouchou led the early going, and then Riccatelli stopped early. Bouchou came in behind and has been behind pretty much ever since, as far as I'm aware. The Magnus Wallander Porsche, which is the second of the Pennzoil cars, or numerically the first, I suppose, and the only one still running, that's in 3rd position in the NGT class. We just spoke to his teammate Jeff Lister, who came in and chatted to us and then suffered the curse of the commentator. I'm joined by Tim Sugden as we were talking about the NGT class. Tim, I only spoke to you briefly before the race. It wasn't even on air. I wasn't aware that the effect of the commentator's curse counted if I just stopped by the awning, so I'm sorry about that. Your car out of the race just after you'd got out, and as you said, gone for a quick drink. Now, what about plans in the NGT class for next year? Obviously, it's been a very successful debut for the category, the GT3 Porsche, and pretty much half the field is comprised of these cars. Your team, the MK team, run by Michael Caine, are you planning to come back? And what about your fellow competitors? What do you think about next year's look for you and for Steve O'Rourke?
I think it looks very, very positive. There seems to be a very good feel to it. We had a meeting yesterday with all the teams and with Stefan Rattel, and he outlined the plans for next year. And everybody seems extremely positive. There's a lot of, obviously, Eurosport are going to be covering every race, and that's fantastic. That's all guaranteed. And that obviously helps the teams. It helps get the teams, get the budgets together and things. Steve is from my point of view, Steve's very keen. He wants to carry on. I definitely want to carry on in the European Championship. I'm sure ultimately it will be with Steve. I'm talking to one or two people, but the NGT class pan-European or all around the world is fantastic. The GT3 Porsche, obviously you can race it all around the world, and in fact we've just taken on a car ourselves, my own team that we run in England. We're going to be running a car in the British GT Championship, a GT3 Porsche. So all the things that we're learning here is good, but it's just going to get stronger and stronger, and it is the most competitive class, I say, because the cars are so evenly matched. There's some very good drivers. Each team has at least one very quick driver. People like Christophe Boucher, obviously, are world-class drivers. Bob Wallach here today. So that makes it a very difficult class to win.
I agree entirely, and because everybody can have essentially the same kit by just asking for the right bits from the Porsche factory, as you say, then it really, you get back to almost like a one-mark championship where you've got a level playing field, and the driver and the team and the engineers can make a big difference. As you say, it is fractions of a second that decides who's quickest and who's slowest, so it is a great playing field. And the other advantage, as you pointed out there, is you can race in the FIA series, you can take the identical car and race in the British series, you can race in the American or the European Le Mans series. So suddenly, one car fits all categories almost, if you like, in GT racing. And I think that must be one of the reasons why, or the two reasons really, why the category is so strong. But what you'll have to do, obviously, is make sure that when we're doing next year's 10 races live, you avoid me like the plague, because otherwise you won't get a chance to finish any of the races. All right, well, listen, thank you very much indeed, Tim Sugden, and go and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Beautiful afternoon still here at Magny Cours. And Tim, unfortunately, as we mentioned, out of the race early. Now, you were watching earlier on Mike Hazelman's leading the race. It was originally from the number 10 Belmondo Viper here, but Jamie Campbell-Walter passed them into second place as Kumpen hands over to Gosselin. So Mike Hazelman's still leading the race, 77 laps in. But now, how does this work out in terms of their fuel? I reckon they need to come in on lap 78, according to what they've done so far. And if they don't, then one of two things. Either A, I can't count, which Paul Truswell will know perfectly well from Le Mans, and everybody else will know from anything else they've ever seen. Or B, they have saved some fuel. So they've done 77, they're on lap 78. Every lap now, if he can go past, that Hazelman's goes past the pits, is going to be a positive bonus for them, and they really need some. Now, Jamie Campbell-Walter is in the lead Lister Storm, which is in second place, and closing now, 45 seconds behind Hazelman's. Let's see if we can catch up with his teammate, Julian Bailey.
Julian, you've managed to catch up a bit of time after Jamie's unfortunate black flag.
Yeah, he had a stop and go. It's very difficult to see the yellows. The sun's very low, and it's an easy mistake to make. But yeah, we made up some time. I think the other car's got to make a pit stop, so we can still win from where we are.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, abject silence in our headsets here in the commentary booth at Magny Cours. I hope that you heard whatever it was Julian had to say. It'd be nice to be able to feed back on that and to allay or arouse fears and suspicions within us. I do apologise if you didn't hear that either. Seems like a bit of a technical problem. We will be hopefully trying to get the information for you from the pit lane anyway. Now, as Tim Sugden was mentioning earlier on, next year's championship, the FIA GT Championship, again being presented to the teams here at the final race here as part of Eurosport's Racing Weekends programme. I have had a couple of emails asking about that. The series next year will be the focus of the racing weekends. The Euro STC will be involved. The Formula Renault 2000 Championship, we're going to show you today's race in a short while, will also be involved, and up to a couple of other support races yet to be nominated. And we will be showing qualifying live from the Euro STC and the FIA GT, either directly live or where there's a clash with a previous commitment delayed during the course of the afternoon, and highlights in the evening on Saturday of every racing weekend. And on Sunday, well, the FIA GT, as today, will be the cornerstone. We'll show the start live, we'll certainly show the finish live wherever we don't have clashing commitments. And in the middle sections of the race, between the pit stop windows, we will try and bring you up to date with the Euro STC action and the Formula Renault action from that weekend. So those will be the cornerstones of the racing weekends. There are going to be 10 championship race weekends, and if I can look through my huge pile of bumps that I picked up the other day, I'll try and give you an idea of the sort of venues that it's going to end up going to. Meanwhile, Andrew will pick up, we're starting the 1st of April, there you go, that's a perfect day, at Monza. The round 2 will be at Brno in the Czech Republic. Magny Cours in France will be the 3rd race. Silverstone, Zolder, Budapest. Going back to the Lausitzring, the Berlin Speedway in the beginning of August for race 7, and then to the A1 ring, to Jarama and to Estoril. So Andrew will be able to top up our tans just like you do all the time in the final couple of races back in September and October of next year. But again, all of those will be based around the FIA GT series. There'll be live on-site productions by Eurosport, and we'll again try and bring you the highlights and the best of the action from the Euro STC and from the Formula Renault Championships. We're enjoying his battle here, Andre Arler. We saw him in the pits earlier on and battling with, a car that's a couple of laps ahead of him now. I think make that 3. That is the NGT leading car of Riccatelli. And this, I can't remember which is in which. Riccatelli and Cuesta this weekend. Luca Riccatelli and Tito Cuesta. And they are leading the class by, well, what would you estimate that gap at? 5 or 6 feet maybe from the Chirot Porsche, which is in 2nd position. That is currently being driven by Christophe Bouchou again. The official timing at the line was 0.7 of a second. Yeah, I'll go with that, okay. Visually it looks to be pretty much the same. So we were talking earlier on about the potential possibly of the Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell Walter car being re-penalised for not coming in for its yellow flag indiscretion earlier enough. We will try and find out about that. We will bring in the highlights of the Formula Renault race in just a few minutes, and then I will send Andrew off to leg it all the way down to the far end of the pits and to try and find out from race control or Lawrence Pierce and/or what's going on. Meanwhile, just a quick email answer from Steve R, who is watching and being very anonymous. He said, excuse my ignorance, as the screensaver comes in, excuse my ignorance, what sort of engine do the Lister Storms have? Well, it's based around Jaguar's 7-litre Le Mans winning V12 power plant. It's a 2-valve engine, but it's really been redeveloped and rebuilt by over the years by the Lister team themselves. So they pretty much make their own stuff. It's the Carsport Holland car underneath us at a standstill. Now, that is after 80 laps, so he's made it, I reckon, saved himself 3 laps at, let's say, 1 minute 40, so that's he saved himself 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes on the racetrack. Andrew, if they can do that again, they should just make it to the end of the race without having to make a final splash and dash. So it looks as though they may just have got themselves back on target, but at the moment, well,
it's very close. It's very close. I mean, this is why it's going to go down to the wire. So when we come back, it will be very interesting. I personally think that because we haven't had any more notification on this stop-go penalty, the delay of the stop-go penalty, I think probably that now is not an issue. And it would be a great shame if it was. Let's see this result finished on the track and not in the steward's room. But like you said, I'll go and find out, see what I can find out, and talk to the various parties concerned.
So, the Lister you're watching here, now the race leader, took the lead as the number 25 car of Mike Hazelman's was at a standstill. Tom Coronel once more on board, and he was turning some pretty fast lap times in his first stint in the car. They've now made 3 pit stops, so they're into their 4th stint in this 3-hour race. And the Lister team, well, they've made 3, but actually one of them wasn't a pit stop, it was a stop-and-go penalty. So they've made 2 stops in the same time. And I figure, well, that's it for them. I don't think the way that they've been running, they'll need to make another stop. Now, that's quite some discrepancy. 7-litre V12, 8-litre V10. Surely it just can't be the size of the engine between the slightly smaller capacity Lister and the bigger capacity Viper. I mean, you're saying that the Viper's using a bit more fuel, but twice the number of pit stops. I mean, assuming that the Lister's taking on, let's say, the maximum allowance, the Viper really can't be taking on that much less unless they're fooling themselves. So if they're using about 100 litres each at the same time, I mean, it's using nearly double the amount of fuel.
Yes, it is an extraordinary situation. And as we said, looking at the other Vipers, they don't seem to be suffering nearly so much as that particular car. So it's obviously going to be frustrating for them. And I'll whip down as well and try and find out. Obviously, Tom's now in the car, but I'll go and find out as well. So hopefully have an update on the situation and the calculation. But looking at the screen now, after they've done that lap, so they're both out of the pits, if you like. They're 37 seconds behind Tom Coronel is to Jamie. So that's a fair chunk. It'll be interesting to see what times Tom can turn in.
Final point that you asked earlier, what do we think a splash and dash lap might be in terms of lap time? I said maybe about 3 minutes. Well, they're full pit stop there, although I don't think they changed tyres. You were watching out the window. Did you?
Yes, they did. They actually did.
Okay, well, so a full stop with a tyre change is 2 minutes 54 lap time, so they lose about a minute doing their stop. So if it's a splash and dash, then you would add
about 50 seconds. 50 seconds, I would say.
50 seconds? Okay.
Yes, that's
all right.
The talk.
So, Bailey Campbell-Walter lead from Hasemans and Coronel, but anything could happen in the next 40 minutes. Welcome back live to Magny Cours Eurosport in the final round of the FIA GT series. Now, before we come to the conclusion, the title deciding end of this 3-hour race live on Eurosport, let's catch up with a little bit of the action. Jamie Campbell-Walter leads the FIA GT race from championship rival Tom Coronel. Not good enough for Coronel to win the title at the moment. Mark Duez there is in third place. But before the cars got underway this morning, the Formula Renault 2000 race started. We'll bring you the action from that right now. Now, as the cars came to the grid, the fastest man in practice had been Eric Salignon, the Barroso Racing Team, the Frenchman out-qualifying championship points leader Felipe Massa, the Brazilian for Cram Motorsport. But Massa, in the pale blue-nosed car there, getting a great start from the grid, and Salignon really dropping himself right in it from the word go. Hugo van der Haan, the Dutch driver, started in third place ahead of countryman Charles Zvoltsman, and they were right up there in the first couple of corners. Well, Felipe Massa leading the field away, but further back contact between John de Portales and Robin Longchamp, and both of those drivers dropping into the gravel. 64 there, the Longchamp car out of the race. For me, Felipe Massa leading quite comfortably as Jürg Hart also outbrakes himself. And across the line, Massa by a big margin from Hugo van der Sam, with Zvoltsman in third place. Well, starting from second position on the grid really didn't seem to worry the championship leader too much. The only thing that has really seemed to worry him this year has been, on occasion, Kimi Räikkönen, the winner of the British Formula Renault Championship, and on rather more occasions, Matteo Grasotto as well, the JD Motorsport driver, who seems to have been fairly influential in the season. Well, Eric Salignon down in fourth place from the grid, and there is the number 9 machine spinning out from way down the order, Robert van der Berg. Massa leading comfortably, and with every lap extending his advantage. Seemed as though he'd managed to find a 2.5 litre engine for his 2 litre Renault. Fastest lap of the race, confirming what the screens and your eyes could tell you, that there was clearly nobody in contention in this race with Felipe Massa, and it was going to need some sort of disaster from the Brazilian for him not to win it. And fortunately for him, disaster didn't seem to be coming from any quarter. Well, Hugo van der Haan in second, Zvoltsman in third, with Eric Salignon hanging on there in fourth position. And just behind them, Nicolas Lapierre in fifth place, where he started, ahead of Arno Piet, who also started in the sixth position in which he was running. It looked as though pretty much the positions were set, and not an awful lot was going to happen. But for Felipe Massa, the championship leader, he really wasn't worried what racing was going on behind him. because he needed maximum points here to try and increase his chances. Still some way to go in the series before they get to the Euro-Renault finals in the beginning of December in Valencia. While Ham and Schwartzman in second and third position, very close indeed. And still hanging on there, poleman Eric Salignon really gave it all away at the start though, misjudged the revs and the clutch completely, and it just didn't happen for him. Salignon trying to recover, fastest lap merely serving to bring him onto the tail of the bunched second and third men, Ham and Schwartzman, and at least he was moving away from Lapierre. The Adelaide hairpin, a favourite overtaking position, and the change there between Arnaud Biet and the number 21 car of Matteo Grasotto. Grasotto pulling himself up into sixth position. He started in seventh place in the JD Motorsport car, and that's where he had been running right up until that stage. Well, I have lost my picture here, and I believe that you have lost them at home as well. While we try and sort out the technical pickle, stay with us. We'll be back after this short break. And don't forget your emails, motorsports@eurosport.com. Welcome back, Martin Haven live at Magny Cours, and I'm afraid that I have no idea what you're saying. We've lost all power in our outside broadcast van, I'm afraid. The circuit power seems to have gone down. Mercifully, I do have a timing screen, and there's a little flicker on our vision. Now, we haven't got any pictures to show you at the moment from the circuit, so we'll take another commercial break while they sort out this technical glitch. Jamie Campbell-Walter still leads by 28 seconds from Tom Coronel. The Lister drivers leading their championship rivals. Back with more in a minute. Campbell-Walter leads 90 laps into the 10th and final race in the FIA GT Championship. This was the time situation between the championship contenders. Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter leading the race by over 25 seconds from Mike Hasemans and Tom Coronel, of whom Mike Hasemans is in the championship battle with Bailey and Campbell-Walter. Bailey and Campbell-Walter lead the series by 4.5 points. Hasemans chases. Second place is no good to him, especially if Campbell-Walter and Bailey win. Hasemans has to go all out for victory. We're into the final stages of the race. The Lister has no more fuel stops to make, and we believe that the Carsport Holland car, the Orange Viper, has also no more stops to make, and that means it's a run to the flag. Tom Coronel on board the Mike Hasemans car for the final stint. Jamie Campbell-Walter's last lap, 1:39.4. Coronel's last, 1:38.5. He's catching him at a second a lap. He's some 25 seconds behind. We've got just over half an hour to go. At that rate of closure, it may not be enough, but it's going to be pretty close. If Coronel can keep up that pace and keep up that rate of closing down Jamie Campbell-Walter, then he will be close enough at least to be in with a shouting distance of a challenge. Well, Jamie's best lap, 1:37, currently doing 1:40.3 to Coronel's 1:38.1 last time across the line. The gap closed from 25 points something to 23.4, and so Coronel, as Jamie Campbell-Walter hits a little bit of traffic, and seems to be just a traffic problem, doesn't seem to be anything wrong with the Lister Storm. Coronel closing down now. 2 laps ago it was a 26-second gap, now 23.5. Now Jamie will know what the gap is. He'll be being told by the team, and I'm sure as they lead the championship, even finishing second, it'll be good enough to win it. Half a point, yes, but hey, I don't think that bothered Niki Lauda when he beat Alain Prost to the World Drivers' Crown by half a point. It'll be enough for Bailey and Campbell-Walter to finish second behind Hasemans and Coronel. They'll still be champions, so Campbell-Walter really no need to rush. He's got 20-odd seconds in hand, no need to come into the pits, for fuel at least, and Coronel, well, we don't think he will need to stop as well. There's no point in him planning to make a stop and go, because they'll never win the championship. He has to run to the end as strong as he can, and it will be win or bust, basically, for them. They have to win or run out of fuel in the attempt. Second place clearly won't be enough. Now, getting back to some of our emails that we've been receiving earlier on, I just sent Andrew Gilbert-Scott off down to the pits to research what is going on with regards to the team strategy, and maybe he can bring us up to speed on that a moment or two ago. But I did say before the race that it's your opportunity via email to contact us at motorsports@eurosport.com and send us an email with your questions or to correct anything stupid that I say. So obviously, having been talking to Jeff Lister and Tim Sugden about the NGT class, GTO as it is in the British GT Championship, saying that the Porsche 911 GT3R is pretty much the class of the field in there, somebody took great pains to point out to me immediately, and I think probably within a couple of seconds, that of course the TVR Speed 6 has won in that class and has won the last 2 rounds of the British Championship in that category. And it wasn't Martin Short, the man who builds and races them either. So thank you very much, Matthew Johnson. I only open my mouth to change feet normally anyway, so we'll put that right. Across the globe, certainly, the GT3R is not just in terms of numbers, but in terms of result, the dominant car in GTO or NGT or the GT class in the American Le Mans Series. But yes, the TVR Speed 6 has been A, very fast, B, a race leader, and finally at Spa at Silverstone, a class winner in the NGT category, courtesy very much of the efforts of Martin Short. Now there is Tom Coronel just diving inside one of the NGT cars that looks like it should be blindingly fast, but tragically isn't one of the Ferraris, and I think that was the Philippe Alliot car. He is down in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th place in class, behind all the pretty much all the currently running Porsches. So no problems there for Coronel, and Coronel taking no prisoners in traffic again. Here's the NGT leader though, car number 52, and Christophe Bouchou has got back ahead of Luca Riccitelli. We saw earlier on that Riccitelli stopped early, and then for the main portion of the middle of the race, it's been a pit stop decided lead between the 52 car here that was on pole by a comfortable margin and led the early going, and the 77 car, the Riccitelli car, which has been vying with it for the lead. Now they're running first and second in class. They are 28.3 seconds apart though, Bouchou having the advantage over Riccitelli. Magnus Wallander in third place in that category in the G-Force Porsche, the Pennzoil, the yellow car that you may catch a glimpse of around the back. Well, Jamie Campbell-Walter leading the race. Julian Bailey's out of the car. What did he have to say for himself, Andrew? We saw him earlier on screen, but what's the feeling down there in the two camps?
Well, yes, I mentioned to him, obviously, just to see his reaction regarding this possible infringement of the stop-go penalty, but he actually said they know nothing about it, and although I didn't speak to Lawrence, apparently he hasn't said anything about it, so I believe that probably is not an issue. It was just something that was maybe a bit of hope in the other camp. Julian looked very hot, and he says that the car is handling extremely well, but that the brakes are going away slightly, which would probably be normal by this stage of the race. That is, the front brakes are just going away, so the car tends to lock up the rears a bit easy, which sometimes we see on screen, the car just a little bit loose at the back end as he gets to the end of the straight. But he said other than that, they feel very confident, the car's running very well, and obviously their fuel consumption's been very good. So, like I say, he looked hot, but comfortable with it all.
Now, I've got a question for you while we're talking about brakes particularly. One of the big differences between cars in this series and cars at Le Mans and in the American Le Mans Series is to see one of the Freisinger Motorsport cars with a left rear puncture. Is there brakes? In the American Le Mans Series, cars run on carbon brakes, even in this class, but here, and in the British Series as well, I think, they run on steel brakes. Now, how does that affect at all the life of the brakes in the car? I mean, if they were carbon, would they be still strong at the end as they are at the beginning, or do they fade as well?
Well, they will fade eventually, but they have a much better life, and they have a lot better braking system. They do stop the car obviously much quicker with less effort. But yes, we can see there quite a lot of warning ahead to the cars as he's flashing his light. But yes, the brake systems will fade more with being steel brakes, and by the end of this race, there is a fair amount of braking at this circuit, as I think Tim was maybe saying earlier on. So it does wear the brakes, but it shouldn't be an issue as such. It's just a matter of either adjusting the brakes biased front and rear, so as you put a bit more braking on the rear, or just obviously taking into account and braking that little bit earlier. But again, that would be quite normal. They wouldn't be over worried about it. It's just purely the driver's comment. An interesting point within the Lister is why the drivers get so hot. The exhaust system actually exits right beside the driver on the exit of the car, so it means that the exhaust system, obviously with a front engine car, the exhaust system's actually going underneath almost the knees of the car. And certainly Philippe Favre was saying to me that he burnt his feet driving earlier on in this year because they hadn't actually got sufficient baffling to take away the heat from it, and they've actually since obviously done that. But even so, with it being an aluminium car in there, it is extremely hot, and they are literally sitting, as it were, on a cooker underneath their legs. So it's even though it's a nice day today, not exactly burning hot, obviously it's extremely hot inside the car.
And very much that will be the case as well for the Vipers, and indeed for the Porsches and the other cars in the NGT category, because they're steel-bodied cars, which obviously transmits the heat well from wherever the source is, and particularly for the big front-engine cars with those monster exhausts wrapped around the driver like part of the roll cage, right there outside the paper-thin bodies, but still, you know. In the American Le Mans Series, we've actually recorded pedal temperatures of 200 degrees Fahrenheit inside the cockpits, so they're still pretty hot. Jamie Campbell-Walter leading this race for Lister at Magny Cours, the final race in the FIA GT Championship. Well, it's been a race of ups and downs for the Lister team as we watch the chasers in the championship. Tom Coronel driving Mike-Antoine Hazelman's car. Mike, of course, the second driver of this machine, already been at the wheel and now handed over to Coronel for his second and final stint. And the Lister team, well, they started with a bang, 4 wins on the trot, straight out of the blocks for Jamie Campbell-Walter and Julian Bailey. And, well, you know, it could have been wrapped up as early as Hungary maybe, but that's not what happened. They had problems with the car, they had problems with the weather and tyre decisions, and all sorts of other things seemed to throw a spanner consistently in the works. I think just when Lawrence Pierce figured that they might have a handle on it, it was all starting to go wrong again. And now they come to the final race, to the final 15 minutes, and they're battling for the championship. They're in the lead, they're in the driving position at the moment. The 25 car can't win it from where it is, or by simply passing the race leaders. Now let's see if we can pick up some idea of what's going on in the Car Sport Holland team. Our cameras should be down in the garage there. Let's see what Mike Hazelmans, the championship rival, has to say for himself.
Tom is 20 seconds behind the Lister car. Do you think he's flying? Do you think he can catch him up?
I think he can catch because he goes very fast. I had to do one stint lower gears to save some fuel. So now we can go to the end. So he's pushing very hard. It's going very quick. So I hope.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Mike Hazelmans is exactly right. Tom Coronel is going very quick. Now, bear in mind that Jamie Campbell-Walter is lapping 2 seconds a lap or so off the speeds that he and Julian Bailey were regularly doing earlier on. He's just dipping into the 1 minute 40, well, not dipping into, just into the 1 minute 40s, 140.1, 140.3 on a pretty regular basis. Coronel is in the mid 137, so he's catching at 2 and 3 seconds a lap. Said that earlier on that the time was running out. He needs somebody else to come with him. He needs Marc Duez, who's third placed at the moment in the number 11 Belmondo Viper, to be right with him. And when they get to Jamie, for both of them to go by, for Coronel to win the race with Mike Hazelmans, and for Jamie Campbell-Walter and Julian Bailey to be forced down into third place. Now, right now, that doesn't look likely, because Duez, the third place car, is 30 seconds plus behind Coronel, and he's actually lapping slower than Campbell-Walter. So right now, Coronel, for Hazelmans, who we just heard from in the pits, is doing everything he can, and all he can do is reel in the race leader and pass him. But they must know now that they have to pray for a problem with the Lister, and that, I have to say, is not beyond the bounds of possibility.
He's certainly trying incredibly hard anyway, because you know, he's giving it all, and that was quite a perhaps a risky overtaking manoeuvre there, but back marked up as he's got nothing to lose. But on the other hand, let's not forget, we constantly focus on the championship, which of course what everybody's fought for through the year, but they'll still be extremely keen to just win this race. And they're looking at the screen here, he's 12.2 seconds behind. He's only just less than a second quicker that last lap, but with time remaining, it could be a sort of grandstand finish to this race between the two of them.
It could be very much a grandstand finish to this race, and as you said, Andrew, really in the end, nothing to lose. They can't win it from second, not with Bailey and Campbell-Walter ahead of them, so they have to win the race or get ahead of the Lister. And there, the number 14 Lister, yes, okay, moment of worry. Now, that might be very important, though. We know the car had contact earlier with a slower car when Philip Fiver was at the wheel. We believe that's what caused his first spin, and that's had a knock-on effect. As so often, innocuous-looking little touches do have. The car is basically a spinning top at the moment. As you can see, that's right outside our window. We're right behind that yellow flag waving in the first floor of the grandstands there, and he's right in front of us. Brown shakes as he drives off again. And again, spinning around the front end, they've got some problem at the front end, some handling malady. Probably, well, the steering wheel we know has been knocked out of line. It probably means the rack's been shifted so it turns more severely in one direction than the other. Okay, the drivers are trying to get used to that, but still, when you're pushing this hard, it's just not that hard to get caught out, is it?
No, and Tom, looking at the screen again, it's now down from 12 seconds down to 10.6, so another couple of seconds taken off that, and it's looking fairly exciting. And obviously the difference is Tom is going to take all the risks, whereas Jamie, of course, should be extremely sensible and try not to take any risks. That would be a ludicrous situation to get himself into, unnecessarily taking risks. So now on the screen we can actually see it's nearly in the single frame to actually see both the cars.
And the other thing that I noticed that was interesting when we were saying down at the Adelaide hairpin here, Jamie Campbell-Walter coming towards us, of course, is that the Philippe Favre car, number 15, is just ahead of him. Of course, Campbell-Walter will be able to pass him easily because he's his teammate. I say no more. But it is just possible. Actually, the point I was going to make earlier, a moment or two ago, when we saw the Favre car spinning, is that if it does retire with Paul Belmondo's cars in third and fourth places in the race, the team's championship, which is still a Lister possibility, they're battling with the Belmondo team, might have been quite seriously affected then if the Favre car was to drop out of the race. Still in the balance, I think, between the Lister and Belmondo teams. I have to say my maths isn't good enough to keep that going in my head, as well as the championship battle, so we'll continue to concentrate on that. There is Favre, there is Campbell-Walter. And it's a long wait, though. It's still a long wait.
Oh, look,
10
he's
seconds.
giving it everything. That's
Coronel's
fantastic.
flying in second place, though. Tom Coronel giving it everything. I think it is safe to say that, having had to save fuel during his first stint in the car, and Mike Haseman's doing the same during Haseman's second stint in the car, when they realised just how much juice it was gulping, these guys were still going quickly and saving fuel. But I think now we see what Coronel could have done, and probably Haseman's too, if they hadn't had this older engine in, which seems to be pretty uneconomical. But let's go down to the pits for Julian Bailey.
Tom Coronel is only 10 seconds behind Jamie. Do you think Jamie can hold him off?
Well, I'm not so sure, but the point is we don't really need to. All we need to do is finish second to win the championship. So, if he does catch him, that will be our plan. But we'd like to win, obviously, win the championship with a win, but we mustn't put ourselves under too much pressure. Second will win us the championship.
All right, Julian, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Julian Bailey, fairly relaxed, I think. Second, he says, will be good enough, and yes, it will. Contact, though, won't be, and we just don't want to. We don't even want to go there. I'm certain that Tom Coronel would not want to do anything like that to win this race or anything else.
It is great, though, to see these cars, which are very often, because of the style of driving or the style of racing being endurance, very often the cars are paced. But it's fantastic to see Tom absolutely squeezing everything out of that car, seeing it exiting all the corners sideways and just giving it everything. It is great to see that, and the car control. And that's definitely closed up. We can see him coming through. He's got quite a lot of traffic in front. And if I was them in front, I would look in my mirrors, because I don't think he's going to be...
Not going to be too pleased at being blocked, is he? He went down from 8.3 to the gap you see there, 6.09, so basically 6.1 seconds. So again, 2.2 seconds, over 2 seconds a lap, and I think that shows just how much Jamie is stroking. Still 140.5 was his last lap compared to 138.3 for Coronel. Coronel got to get through these NGT cars. They're quick in a straight line, though. They're very aerodynamic. They've got good cornering speed. He's got an extra 100 kilos as well, so it's going to make it harder to accelerate out of that tight last corner and harder to break into the tight Adelaide hairpin, but he's done it. He's got through them all, not as cleanly as he would have liked, but still he can see Jamie in front of him. He can see Jamie Campbell-Walter, and that has got to redouble his chances of being able to catch him, because once you can see your rival ahead, it's not just the lap time coming down, then you can really grit your teeth and just hurl the car around. And Andrew, as you said, fantastic to see him really throwing this car around. And if it gets to it in the final 10 minutes where we're now into the final 10 minutes, he's only 6 seconds back. There is the Lister team. Julian Bailey closest to the camera. Lawrence Pierce, the designer of the cars, the owner of the team, the brains behind it all, with the headset on, just watching the timing screen, watching our pictures and watching the monitors, and Well, they're probably quite enjoying this. They're in the driving seat and they know now that Jamie has passed Philippe Favre, the second of their Lister Storms. There you are, you see confirmation of that on the screen. They know they've got a buffer in. Oh, Coronel though.
4.4, it's down to 4.2, which is fairly obvious looking at the screen, but he really is trying. It'll be interesting to see what Philippe does when Tom catches up with him. I think that they probably won't try and create any aggravation. They don't need to from that point of view. I would be surprised.